All right, so I'm going to talk about bridging digital divide in rural Tennessee. An example of a library mobile hotspot lending program. I'm an assistant professor in agricultural economics and also a community economic development specialist for University of Tennessee. So the main motivation from this was coming from anecdotal evidence of people not having internet at home. So they were in McDonald's parking lots, several other places. So they were spending time with kids in cars so the kids can do homework. And also I went to a town hall meeting where the whole state leaders, federal leaders, they all came down and they were asked what were the challenges for the communities. One was broadband access and the second was opioid issues. So we'll talk about broadband. So here's two maps. One on the left is the Federal Communications Commission's broadband data that shows only 24 billion people don't have broadband access, meaning 25 download speed and 3 upload speeds. Then Microsoft independently conducted their own review, ping in computers, Xboxes, all sorts of devices that are hooked to the internet. And they found 162 million people, that's almost half the population of the US, not having internet. So when it comes to Tennessee, this is a map of the digital divide. What we're looking at here is the greens are where people have better access, and the reds and oranges are where people have really poor internet. So major metropolitan areas, Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga, Knoxville, and the Tri-City area have pretty good access, but then look at the Upper Cumberland region or any of these other western counties, we don't have really good access to internet. Here's another map where it shows the population, how much of the population have good internet access. So what we did was we found the counties which had really poor internet. So look at Hancock County, they only had like 3.6% of the population had access to internet. Bledsoe County, 13%, Houston had 16, so on and so forth. So what we did was we picked 3 communities, one in Eastern, one in Middle, one in Western Tennessee. So Hancock was one, Bledsoe was the other, and then Wayne County was the 3rd county. So we chose these 3, and then we tried to see what happens if we provide access. So with providing more broadband, what happens over time is people move in. This is across several cohorts of population, millennials, Generation X, baby boomers. If you have really good connections, people move in, 7.5% of the population would increase, especially more millennials would come in, Generation Xers, baby boomers, not so much. But if you don't have internet, you see a decline in all populations across all cohorts, 3.2% overall, but mainly millennials and baby boomers and Generation Xers. So what we did was we took out devices like these, one of the Verizon device or an AT&T device. So it's basically a mobile hotspot. We let people come into libraries, check them out for 2 or 3 days, just like a book. So they could use it for free. All we were asking for was fill out a simple survey, mainly on usage, experience, and willingness to pay for internet. And if they had any challenges, what would they do? Why they're not connecting? And then we did some speed tests in the local communities just to make sure these devices were working. So here's the 4 hotspot lending programs we had. One in Collinwood, this is in Western Tennessee, Wayne County. Pikeville was in Bledsoe, this is in Hancock, the other county, and then one more in Newport in Eastern Tennessee. So what did we find? So we thought from about 180 checkouts from these libraries, 171 people used it for education, work skills, or research. But at the same time, you see a lot of people with 141 use it for entertainment, which was kind of expected. But also 123 people said they connected with families. And then when we asked them why they were, or when would they subscribe to internet, it's, you can see 1 to 2 months, 3 to 6 months, less than a year, 1 or 2, and then 63 people out of 180 people said they are not planning on purchasing internet. The reason being poor signal strength or affordability. And then when you look at willingness to pay for internet, about 97 people said they'll pay about $10 a month, 79 said 20, and then 71 said $30 a month, and 25 people said they're not likely to purchase internet. So what's going on in terms of educational attainment and income? You see more than half of the population has a high school or a GED or less than that. Very few people, about 40 people, and then as you see, very beyond bachelor's degree, there's very little people having that kind of education level. And then a lot of people making less than $25,000. So that is a significant portion of these rural population, why that's happening. So in terms of usage, what were they doing? A lot of Facebooking, a lot of Netflix and YouTube, but also we saw a lot of people using it to improve skill sets. There are people who are looking at Library of Congress. There are people who are looking at educating themselves. One of the unintended consequences was a lot of people were making arts and crafts in local communities, and they were selling things online. So that was more e-commerce in the local communities. So this is the press we got. A lot of places where people received them very well. And in Hancock County, there was a wait list of like 30 people waiting to get these devices. So it was hugely successful. So we had a couple of undergraduate students, Nate and Nates had worked on this. So we presented this poster at a conference on campus here. And also another undergraduate student who was our summer intern in 2019, she presented this data too. So what happens with broadband? I think we're only talking about access issues, but there's also adoption. You know, just because you have access doesn't mean people adopt it. And once you do both, it's digital inclusion and it eventually leads to community economic development. One of the projects that we're working on is also on digital literacy skills. How do we skill up people on digital skills? How do we safe online? And then for kids, it's educational. It could be like STEM, it could be coding and things like that. And for senior students, like cybersecurity and phishing and preventing all that. So
4 minutes left, Sreedhar, about 4 minutes left.
All right. And then with digital skills and broadband, what happens? You have, with no digital skills, you make about $15 an hour, but with basic digital skills, it would make about 20, and then with advanced, it's almost double, about $28 an hour. So what are the challenges that we face? It was mainly, we had barriers in terms of within, this is legislative and more municipal broadband, you can't expand that in Tennessee. There's legislative blockage in terms of you cannot have a municipality come and install internet. So that's one of the significant barriers, and also population density. Metropolitan areas had about 252 people. On average, Tennessee has 160 people living per square mile, but in rural areas, it's about 44, 45 people. So what it means is you have to put in the length of broadband or fiber optic cable, you need to put in more, and it's expensive. And then also getting right-of-way easements. So it's mainly getting permissions and things were difficult. And then also topography, presence of hills, valleys, and tree coverage is impedes signal strength. And from our surveys, we also noticed it was mainly lack of signal strength and affordable substitute plans, especially in rural areas. Yeah, again, internet signal strength, terrain, hills and valleys. So what we also thought is, you know, librarians from meeting people and talking to people, they were not willing to do this program as well, mainly because there's a lot of paperwork that is involved and it's more of a burden for them. So in order to make this sustainable, there's a federal E-rate program where they can get funding for this, and then we can reduce the burden. And also talking to communities, a lot of, you need to get buy-in from the local leaders, your county commissioners, local government and all. That was quite a bit of a challenge, but we eventually prevailed. We also saw a lot of entertainment and social media use, which is not necessarily bad, but as an extension agent or an extension educator, I want to incentivize more educational programming and training workforce. In summary, we helped about 109 families, mainly with children, to access internet for schoolwork. About 395 adults use it for in rural communities. There was a lot of interest. Like I said, one of the communities had a wait list of more than 30 people trying to access broadband. Over 90% people were highly satisfied. 84% were likely to recommend it to friends and family. We used the data from this study, and we got 3 other grants. We got about $70,000 grant to install a downtown Wi-Fi program in a 5-block radius in one of the rural areas. We also got a Tech Change Makers grant, and then we also installed digital literacy skills. So basically, data helps people make these changes and mainly get the ear of federal partners. So, and also what we also found was there's opportunities to partner with other libraries, schools, state parks, and more healthcare providers. These are my references. That's my contact information.